if everybody could join hands with somebody. You don't have to totally make a circle. No straining allowed. If you could uncross your legs. Go ahead and uncross your legs. Yeah, just take whatever's on your lap and put it on the floor for now. All right, together we close our eyes and we'll take six actually, slow, deep, relaxing breaths. Really breathe in deeply. And as you breathe in as deeply as you can, allow yourself to see light moving into your body with each breath. As you exhale, just let the tension drain away. Breathing more light and letting go more tension with each breath. And as you enter this space of peace, just notice your breathing. Just watch it. And we see ourselves now on top of a beautiful mountain in the center of a circular grove of trees. In the center of our circle, a bonfire blazes forth, and it lights the grove up with a sacred golden light. And as we breathe, we recognize this light also emanates from us. The light from within matches this light from the bonfire. And as they join, we feel more peace and more love. And we let go into this peaceful place. We feel the chair beneath us, and the floor beneath the chair, the earth beneath the floor. And we allow these things to take the weight of our body now. We no longer need to feel as though we're holding our body up. We're just letting go. And into the sacred space we invite and call forth the power of our celestial Creator, our Mother and Father. To this force of love we dedicate this time that we spend together. Our relationships, our work, our life. And we are very grateful that we've been drawn together tonight for this very, very important process of healing. And we ask that our minds and our hearts be guided and left open to receive more light and more love. Thank you very much. Together we say, blessed be. So in talking about healing, I think the first thing that's really important for any of us to realize is that we're all sick. The whole world is sick. This is a sick place. And if you don't want to look at that, that's okay. Hi. Find anything, any space that you like. If you don't want to look at the fact that the world is a sick place, if that makes you nervous, that's very understandable. But you cannot begin to heal something that you're not willing to look at. In the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first thing you have to do is recognize you've got a problem. Second thing you have to do is recognize that you don't have any control over this problem. And then you have to recognize that there's a power that is outside of your own thought system that can restore your mind to sanity. And the same is true for any healing. So if you have a dysfunction, if you have an illness, if you have a sickness, it might be an emotional sense of unwellness. It might be a physical ailment. You might have a disease. You might have a mental irritation that you deal with. You might have a personality problem. Whatever it is, you've got an illness. And to say, oh no, I'm okay, I'm perfect just the way I am, is avoiding the whole point, avoiding the whole process. If you were perfect, you wouldn't be here. Because as in our tradition, my own spiritual tradition is it's called the DCW, the Druidic Craft of the Wise, and it was taught to us by a very wise person named Eli. But he didn't teach us anything that's unique. These same principles you'll find in any major spiritual literature. You'll find it in A Course in Miracles. You'll find it in transcendental meditation. You'll find it in the teachings of Muktananda. You'll find it in all kinds of different true religious and philosophical paths. And the basic thought here is that this world is not real. This world that we perceive here is an illusion. In the East they call it Maya, the realm of illusion. And what that is when, just from Metaphysics 101, is our minds are very powerful because our minds are an extension of the Creator. Some people call it God. In fact, it's a very easy thing to call it God because God is something that most everybody understands. Some of us call it the goddess. Some of us call it the cosmic intelligence. Some of us call it our higher mind. Whatever you want to call it, there's this source, this prime source of love that extends itself out into creation, and that's what we are. A Course in Miracles says that we are like sunbeams, part of the sun, or we are like waves of the ocean. We are of the same spiritual fabric as our Creator, as God. However, there is this thing that happens that since our mind is the same mind as the mind of God, we have the ability to create like God creates. And the creative process, when it's turned against us, makes us fearful of everything that's unlike us, that everything we're fearful of, and if everything that we perceive as being separate from us. And there's a false sense of ourselves that in many traditions they call the ego, wherein it's a matrix of beliefs that we have about ourselves and the world that are based on separation, that are based on fear. It's a fearful perception of the world. And that fearful perception of the world, due to the fact that our minds are so creative, cause us to have an experience of the world which is fearful. Because what we believe, especially the beliefs that we don't bother to question, are created for us so that they're reflected back, because this world, this mortal world, is nothing but a reflection back to us. It's always reflecting back to us what we're thinking. And what we're thinking, as long as we're not thinking the thoughts of God, we are thinking just very, very really, very, very absolutely the thoughts of fear, the thoughts of separation. Everything that we're thinking that's not love, and when I say God, that's all that means, is the thoughts of love, that prime cause. The thoughts of love is everything that's real. A Course in Miracles says everything else is within the realm of an hallucination. So what we are seeing here in this three-dimensional reality is within the realm of a hallucination. That's a hard thing for people to swallow because we are taught that the world is real. Everything outside of us is real. If I can touch it, it's real. If I can smell it, it's real. If I can taste it, it's real. But A Course in Miracles points out to us that if you were going to go just by your physical senses, if a bus drives down, I don't know that he uses this exact example, but it's a good one. If a bus drives down the street and you watch that bus follow a long road, it looks as though the road gets narrower and narrower, and eventually the bus disappears. If you were going to follow what your eyes see, you were going to think that bus disappeared. But we know that the bus didn't disappear, right? So you can't just trust your physical senses, because your physical senses are, by definition, limited. So our bodies are limited. Our bodies are limited. Our bodies are, according to many different traditions, here as learning vessels, as they're a suit of clothes that we are wearing by which we can communicate. The reason why we need to communicate is because we need to learn. The reason why we're here is because we need to learn that this realm is not the real world, but there is a world beyond this world that is real. It's not in a different place, but it is in a different perception. Does that sort of make sense? When you see the world through the eyes of love, the world transforms in your presence. So there are two different worlds. And A Course in Miracles says that the mind cannot serve two masters. If the vision of one world costs you the vision of the other. The vision of a world of fear will give you a world of fear. The vision of a world of love will give you a world of love. But again, it's not a place, it's a perception. Okay? Does that sort of somewhat make sense? Also, I want to just get a little theory before we actually go into healing. according to most beefy metaphysical teachings, and I like beefy teachings. I don't like that soft core stuff. I like the real hardcore. I like that real hardcore principle. Hardcore principle says that love is real, everything else is not. Love is real, everything else is a hallucination. So if you're experiencing something that's not loving, then you are not really experiencing anything at all, but you're thinking that you are. What that means is that you've fallen asleep. So what every spiritual path will teach you is that every spiritual path that's real will teach you that what our job here is to wake up to who we are, is to not allow ourselves to be lulled to sleep by the conditions of the world, to not allow ourselves to be lulled to sleep by our own minds, by our own egos. So what you think, what your ego will tell you is that it's my disease, it's my money, it's my car, it's my life, it's my body, it's me, 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 me. And everybody knows that this is true. Everybody is very egocentric. You walk around the world, I wonder if they're looking at me. You walk around the world, I wonder how I'm going to make my rent. You walk around the world thinking about these thoughts, right? Or you walk around the world thinking spiritual thoughts, because then you will be perceived as being spiritual even in your own mind. But it's still about you. Does that make sense? So what we want to do is realize that we do that. And it's very machine-like, and it's very automatic, because it's just a brain function in a way, because we've been trained for so long to think in these terms, to think in these very limited terms, that to try to turn your mind away from an ego-centric universe is very takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of courage, and it doesn't last for very much more than a couple of minutes, especially at first try. Anybody that's ever tried meditating, you know what that's like. When you meditate, after about 2 minutes, it's like, oh, come back to center, right? That's why, we'll talk about this later, why meditation is such a prime important key in any kind of spiritual transformation. Okay, so if you're going to be real hardcore about this, all illness is mental illness, because there is nothing that is not of the mind. And all healing is mental healing. All therapy is psychotherapy. Not the psychotherapy that the world describes it, but psychotherapy as God describes it, okay? Because there is only one teacher, there is only one healer, and that one healer, that one teacher is the Spirit, is God, okay? Because there's only one mind, okay? In the Christic philosophical perspective, there is only one begotten Son of God does not mean what the Fundis tell you. What that means is that it's all us. We are one mind. You know, in our tradition, we call it Pan. We don't have a Christian tradition in the DCW. We call it Pan, and Pan means all. Pan means one. There is one mind. There's one person here. All of our minds are joined. You think that your mind stops here, and his mind stops there, and her mind stops there, just like our bodies do. But it's because we think in these terms that we have these separated worlds, and that's why we have so many problems, and that's why we have disease. Okay, so the body. Am I going too fast? Anybody have any questions? I don't want to just blab and have it just be for nothing. The body is, again, just here as a communication device. It's as a teaching device. A Course in Miracles says, and our tradition also says, that to teach is to demonstrate. When you teach something to somebody, it's because you're living that with them. So so we're all teachers. We are all teachers. Now, are you teaching God's curriculum, or are you teaching yours? You know, if you're being rude to somebody at a restaurant, then you're teaching a curriculum of being rude. That's not of God. So you're teaching a false curriculum. So in that sense, from a Christic point of view, you are embodying the Antichrist. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we all do it. You know, it's nothing personal. It doesn't mean anything bad. You're not bad. Nobody's bad. See, the thing about it is if you're an extension of love, then you are all perfect. You are 100% perfect. There is nothing that I can tell you tonight. There is nothing that do not look to any spiritual literature or teacher to tell you something that you can't find within yourself. It's all there. The problem is we don't want to believe that. We want to believe that what we see with our eyes and what we think about ourselves is real, and what we think about ourselves is very vicious. The world is not as vicious as outside of you as you are to yourself. Isn't that true? How many people have a friend that is as mean to you as you are to yourself? That little nagging voice inside your head that tells you to go do something and then beats you up for having done it. Can you imagine, you have a friend, the alarm clock wakes you up in the morning, the friend calls you and says, oh, you deserve to go back to sleep. And then you go back to sleep and you're late for work, and then they call you at work and you say, God, why'd you go back to sleep? Now you're late. And then that same friend says, oh, let's go to lunch. And you're going to have the salad and the protein, salad at Mother's. And she says, no, let's go have a cheeseburger. So you go have a cheeseburger, and as you're eating the cheeseburger, she says, well, God, you're being kind of a pig. And then you go, and then you're feeling tired, and the person says, well, if you hadn't gone to that late show last night, you would have gotten more sleep. But then she forgot to tell you that she was the one that told you to go to that movie last night, right? And it goes on and on and on. If you had a friend like that, you'd say, fuck you, right? But that's how we treat ourselves. And that's what this is all about. That's what we're talking about. That ego mind is the same vicious mind. That is esoterically what was supposed to be meant by the concept of Satan. It's called the accuser. It's not outside of you. It's nothing powerful. It has no power, right? Because it doesn't exist, but we think it does. If it doesn't come from love, it doesn't exist. But the problem is we go through our whole lives not even knowing who we are. We go through our lives not knowing that we are children of divinity, that we're children of light, that we are created through love, and that we are beings of love. And so the more we allow ourselves to be bullied about by our ego minds, the less we are going to allow ourselves to experience that. So again, this is what we're here to do. We're here to use our bodies to teach each other how to come back to love. That's what we're here for. That's the highest purpose for a body. When you put any other purpose on the body other than that, it puts a strain on the body that the body was not meant to carry. It burdens the body, and then disease sets in. So anytime we allow ourselves to use our bodies to teach anything other than love, we are inviting disease. And that's what that's all about. So when we are having a disease, and disease is not just of the body, disease is about your finances, it's about your whatever, your relationships, your depressions. There's all kinds of diseases, but they are ultimately all mental illnesses. Does that make sense? Okay. So, just again, like what we do, though, what we have to get to realize is that if you do what you continue to do what you used to do, you'll continue to get the results you used to get. So if you want to have a serious transformation, you can't just go to a healer. Because if you go to a healer, what they'll do, and if they're effective, what they'll do, and this is why a lot of people that get into healing either make themselves sick or they stop doing it eventually because they realize what they're up to, is they'll get you into, like, okay, let's just take a televangelist, for instance. Everybody's seen Benny Hinn, and they all drop to their knees, and they have these miraculous healings. I'm not saying that I don't even think it's fake. Some of it is. Some of it is fake. It's obviously some of it's fake, but some of it's real. Because what you do is, okay, let's just take Jesus, okay? Jesus is an archetype. It's a very powerful archetype in our society, okay? Jesus was somebody, according to most teachings, that was able to heal the sick, to raise the dead, and to conquer all illness, to conquer death itself, right? It's a very powerful archetype. You get somebody hooked up enough to that archetype by saying, Jesus, 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 they're going to kind of get frenzied into it, and they're going to get, they're going to connect with that very real energy, right? Because if Jesus did heal the leper, if Jesus did raise the dead, if all minds are joined and our whole being is eternal, we were there, we saw it, And so that person's going to remind us about that. And then we're going to have this miraculous healing. And then we're going to go back to the same old thinking that we used to be in. And we're going to go back to the same old diseases that we used to be in. And then we're going to have less faith. And we're going to think that it's our fate to be sick because there was a temporary healing. So when you go to a faith healer, what you get is a temporary high that gives you mild relief. It's temporary relief, just like aspirin, okay? But all healing of the world, A Course in Miracles says, is, now I'm going to use a word that's a big buzzword, and I want you to understand the tense that it's meaning. In A Course in Miracles it says that all medicine is magic. All medicine is a magical spell. And what it means by that is that what it calls magic in that book is not the same thing that a lot of us who study magic call it. Magic from that perspective is that you're looking to the world to heal yourself of something that's an illness in the world. So you're looking outside, you're identifying with the physical realm, you're identifying with this external thing, as your own identity and as the source of your good. And if you turn to that, then you're going to the exact source of the problem to begin with. So it's saying, hi, come on in. And there's a chair somewhere. Actually, I think that, okay, if that doesn't bother you, that's great. So the problem with drugs is that ultimately they don't have any curative power. Ultimately they don't. And I'm not telling you to go off your drugs if you're on medicine, if you're on meds that the doctor's prescribing you. But this is why. The drug is a physical manifestation that was created in a laboratory by people that believe that the chemicals are going to make a difference, because these physical chemicals are reacting to a physical thing, and nobody's ever addressing the causative principle. Nobody's ever addressing the fact that the reason why this disease was created in the first place was because we were identifying with the physical universe. The identification with the physical universe as who we are and as the source of our good is where disease comes from. Does that make sense? Understanding, thinking that what happens to your body matters. It's a total dichotomy. The best way to heal yourself of a disease is to get to the point where you don't care what happens to your body. You have to get to the point where you don't care what happens to your body, and then all flows. But haven't you noticed in relationships, remember when you were single and you were out looking? Those of you who aren't single, you were out looking and nobody wanted to talk to you, but the minute you got in a relationship, everybody was like coming to you because you weren't available anymore, because you weren't looking, because what you look for, what you're trying to get, you actually repel it. But what we want to do is we want to become magnets, and we want to just draw everything that's good for us on our own. But if you continue to do what you used to do, you'll continue to get the results you used to get. Don't try to teach yourself, because your mind is sick. Okay? Your mind is sick. And so why try to teach yourself how to get well using illness? I think it was Einstein that said we cannot exit the conflict from the realm of consciousness that is the conflict. You cannot exit the place of disease from the realm of consciousness that is the disease. That's why you need intervention. But it's not the kind of intervention that we think about when we turn on TBN. No offense, with all due respect. But it's more of the intervention that we're getting at in things like the 12-step programs and things like that, where you say, I cannot heal myself. I recognize that of myself I can do nothing. Of myself, I'm constantly running into walls. I'm constantly doing the wrong thing. I'm trying. Isn't it true? Everybody's doing your best. We're trying. But we're not equipped. We weren't meant to find the answer. Nobody here was created to find the answer. The answer lies within you, but it's not of you. It's like a sunbeam off the sun, but the source is the sun, not the beam. We think we're sunbeams that are separate from the sun. You can't separate a sunbeam from the sun. You can't separate a wave from the ocean. You can't. It's impossible. But you can think you can. That's because our minds are so powerful, because God gave us that power, because we are the same thing as God. You don't have anything that Jesus didn't have. You don't have anything less than Jesus had. He was no better than you. If you believe that he existed. You don't have anything better than Moses had. Moses didn't have anything better than you. They're not of a different realm of being. They're just people. What you have is more than they had. You have all that stuff on top of you. You have all that negative thinking. You have all of that crap. You have all those addictions and those habits and that other stuff. But you don't have anything less. How many people actually believe that Moses parted the Red Sea? How many people believe that Jesus actually healed a leper? Okay, so Christians have more miracles than Jews, I guess. Whatever. Okay. How many people want to believe that those things happened? Okay. If you believe that it could happen, if you believed that it happened, what that is telling you is that if you have the faith that it's possible for a miracle to happen, what happened wasn't that Moses walked up to the ocean and went, part the Red Sea, and walks into the ocean and turns back and goes, ta-da, isn't that cool? Or Jesus walks on the water and starts tap dancing and going, neat, huh? Look what I can do, gang. It was because something needed to happen. There was a purpose to it. And they didn't do it on their own according to spiritual principle. It just happened spontaneously. Have you know what beginner's luck is? They had beginner's luck. They had beginner's luck if they had anything at all. Beginner's luck is when somebody comes into a situation, they don't know how to do it. They don't know what the rules are. They're totally innocent. And they come in, they're totally free and innocent, and everything just kind of like is drawn to them. Everything just happens in their presence. Jesus, if he did do it, if he did raise the leper, if he did raise the leper, I said once if he healed the leopard, and that was totally wrong. He made the leopard change his spots. No, if he did heal the leper, it wasn't him doing it. The leper healed himself in his presence. Why? Because Jesus, again, had the faith of a child that, all I know is love. And if God didn't create it, it doesn't exist. I don't see the leprosy in you. So in your presence, you don't see it either, because I'm so clear on that, you don't see it either. So that's what we're supposed to do. If you see somebody having a problem and you start bitching about it, are you helping them? And again, this is like, what kind of problems do we have? We bitch about problems because somebody's not nice enough, or because they're, because they're a drag, or because they're annoying, because they whine, or whatever. Again, you have to know your limits, but that doesn't mean you have to sit down and have lunch with these people necessarily. But to complain about them, to bitch about them, you're not healing them. You're not a force of healing in their life. What you're doing is you're helping to reinforce the problem. Isn't that true? So if you're interested in healing your body, or healing your mind, or healing your relationships, or healing anything, the first thing you've got to do is understand of yourself, you can do nothing. You have not got what it takes to do anything, and neither did Jesus, and neither did any of the, whatever, even in whatever your gurus are, whatever you think. You've got to have a model, though. You've got to have some sort of model. I use Jesus because that's what I was raised with, but I'm not a Christian, I think Jesus isn't one either, by the way. But if you want to be a great painter, you go study the works of Picasso or whatever. If you want to be a great composer, you have to study the works of the masters. If you want to be a healer, you study the people that you think do that. If you want to be somebody that's an artist in consciousness, you want to expose yourself to that. You're not worshiping them. These people they're people. They're people. They're not to be worshipped. They didn't want to be. They weren't supposed to be worshipped. But you go, wow, okay, I see how they did that. And you kind of get it, so that you can become that yourself. That's the whole idea. So if you want to be a healer, first of all, again, remember, physician, heal thyself. You've got to heal your own mind, but you can't heal it by yourself. But there is a power within you that can. And that is what we, in our tradition, in the Druid tradition, we call it our mental teacher. Some people call it the Holy Spirit. Some people call it the higher self. Some people call it the spirit guide. But again, sometimes the spirit guide is a touchy term, because people will just use their ego minds to develop a spirit guide that will tell them what they think they want to hear. What a real inner teacher is a still, small voice that exists in perfect peace. If your body is at perfect peace, if you are able to relax in the presence of this being, which is really just a higher part of yourself, then that is going to be guiding you into what to do. So the way to get that, the way to do that is by practicing. You have to practice, just like playing the piano. You've got to be able to meditate. And believe me, there is no religion, there is no spiritual path that's better than anything else. And you know what else? The spirit can use anything. If you're a Satanist, it could use it. It doesn't matter. I have no judgment on what you're into. It's not the form of it, it's the content that matters. The spirit is able to use anything, right? So, because life is life. But over here they got, plumerias. Over here they got daisies. They're all flowers. They're all wonderful. They're great. And they all serve a purpose, right? But what we want to get to is the point where we're practicing this stuff. And so the first principle that you've got to do is you've got to be able to get at peace within yourself on a daily basis. Some people call it prayer, some people call it meditation, some people call it relaxing, whatever. But it's not just relaxing and letting your mind wander. It's not daydreaming. It's bigger than that. It's that place of no thinking. It's that place of perfect quiet. And the place you have to get, in order to get to a quiet mind, you've got to be able to observe how loud you are. Constant chatter Your mind does not shut up. Have you noticed? Your mind does, if you don't notice this yet, then you have a little bit more homework to do. Sit down and think of nothing for 5 minutes, okay? And see how well you do. See if you get 30 seconds. See if you get 1 second. So there's all kinds of techniques that you can use. So a real easy technique is just to notice your breathing, just to notice the pattern of your breathing. Okay? Again, I'm not teaching you a religion. This is not a religion. There's spirituality and then there's religion. Religion has its place, but it's not for everybody and it's not necessary. The only thing that religion can do that's worthwhile is to show you spirituality. But if it's not doing that, if it's showing you something else, then you can do without it. You're probably best to do without it. What you want to do is get into that place every day where you can relax your body completely and you can just clear your mind. And a good way to do that, and one of the easiest ways, is just to notice your breathing. Don't try to change your breathing. Noticing it will automatically start changing it, but you'll notice that you're doing that, and then you'll notice yourself noticing that. Eventually you'll get to a point where it's like peaceful, and that's where you want to get to. But you don't want to just do it once. You want to get to it as a daily exercise. Just like you go to the gym. If you want a nice body, I'm sorry, you can't get a body just by visualizing. You got to go out and work your body. You can't just get... I remember my music teacher that I had, she said, she told the class, she said, you can all be great musicians to one degree or another, but you can't get there by wishing. You can't get there by wishing. You got to do it. You cannot get to become any kind of a spiritual adult by wishing. You've got to get there by doing. But you know what? God needs your maturity right now, right? God needs us to get to this place where we can be used, because that's the whole idea. We are here to be teachers, right? If you want to heal your body, well, then you let your body be used for what the purpose is. The purpose is to be used to teach love. The only way you can be used to teach love is to ask, please use me, right? You can't... I remember hearing once that this person had been a heroin addict for 10 years. And had been through 12-step programs and tried different sobriety programs, and it never stuck. And it wasn't until he realized, oh wow, I can just ask God to take the addiction away from me, to take the craving away from me, that it kicked in. And that's because people think, knowing that God's in charge is not enough. Knowing that, and again, you need to just translate. If God is not a comfortable phrase for you, use something else that works. It doesn't matter. But knowing that God's in charge of the universe is not enough. Asking that your life be used by divine order is a totally different thing. Saying, I know that God's taking care of my problem is different than saying, God, please handle it. Do you understand the difference? If you have a disease, how many people have asked God to take the disease from them? And if you've done it, how sincere were you? And you know how sincere you were by the fact that you are still doing that every day, right? I remember in an AIDS support group, the AIDS support group was asked to write a letter to the AIDS virus. And then they were asked to take down dictation back from the AIDS virus. Nobody got a nasty letter from the AIDS virus. Nobody once got a nasty letter from the AIDS virus. It was very compassionate what was going on there. But the AIDS virus, one of the things that I thought was very poignant is the AIDS virus says, you can't say that you've tried love. You can't say that you've tried love to heal this virus. Because not one person can say that this society has that even a group of people have done a 30-day prayer vigil on nothing but this, nothing but healing. At least at this point, it's probably different now. And that was very true, that nobody in that room could say, yeah, all I've ever done was just dedicate my life to God, and that's it. There was all this other stuff. Yeah, well, I know that God's in charge, but I got to do this and I got to do that. The other thing that's interesting too is in cancer, there's a whole cancer therapy where I think it's great because they're using the mind. They're saying they're visualizing soldiers blasting the cancer out of the body. But why can't we just say, why can't there just be little fairies taking the cancer off? Why does it have to be that? Why do we always have to fight that? You hear that all the time. This brave fight with Parkinson's disease. I saw on TV Guide last night for what's that actor? Who's got Parkinson's now? Isn't it Parkinson's? Michael J. Fox, his brave fight with Parkinson's disease. And it's just like, well, if you're going to fight the disease, it's no wonder that the disease is still there. Because as many religious teachers will tell you, you create what you defend against. We create what we defend against. I know in pain therapy, if you're dealing with physical pain, one of the best things you can do is to experience the pain and relax into the pain and soften into the pain. When you start trying to deny the existence of the pain, you can use these principles if the ego mind gets a hold of the principles, there's love and everything else doesn't exist, therefore you're bad for feeling pain, You're just beating yourself up with a divine principle, right? And I've seen people do that. They'll be in throes of agony, in fighting in their last days of living. Throes of agony, in total paralysis almost, saying, this pain is not real, this pain is not real, this pain is not real. What they needed to do was just invite the experience of the pain. Because what you're unwilling to experience is what persists. What we resist is that which will persist. It's a great thing to know and remember. What we resist persists. So, one of the first things we have to realize is that wonderful image that Werner Erhard told us was that male peacocks have the most beautiful feathers. And the reason why they have those beautiful colored feathers is because of a particular digestive process happens when peacocks eat thorns. Peacocks eat thorns and then they're transformed. And that's a great image for all of us. If we are having an experience that is painful, we don't try to get away from the pain. You don't try to run away from your life. You don't try to run away from your depression. When you go into a good therapist's office, if they're a good therapy, they're not going to say, oh, well, think of something else. Isn't that true? A good therapist, and by the way, if you're in therapy, good for you if it's working, but if you go into therapy and you have a great time all the time, you need to see a new therapist, right? That's not what therapy is about. Therapy is about realizing that you're sick, and that's what you're here to work on is your sickness, not talking about how wonderful you are, because the real you is wonderful, but you have no clue who that is. And these other games that you run on yourself, and we all do it, are not who you are, but that's who we identify with. And that's the sick part of us. And that's the part of the mind that's creating disease in our bodies. That's the part of the mind that's creating disease in our relationships. That's the part of the mind that's creating disease in our environment. AIDS is a immunosuppressive disease, right? The immune system is suppressed in the body. Is it not, in cancer, in a sense, well, we'll talk about cancer in a minute, but AIDS is all about the body just shutting down. Anybody that's been through any symptoms with AIDS or knows people with AIDS, you know that one of the things you get is just this, I can't move, I don't want to get up. And the whole body just shuts down. And all these little infections that should be no problem, the body just can't resist it. It's just like this. Well, that's not the person with AIDS' fault first. If you're dealing with a disease of any kind, don't, again, use these principles against yourself. You shouldn't be sick. You shouldn't be sick. You're doing something wrong. We do that. I see that a lot of times with these metaphysics people, these New Age people, why'd you create that reality for yourself? As if you've done some sin, we're all sick, we're all sick on some level. But this particular illness is a wonderful reflection of the whole racial consciousness at this time. Because if you look at our environment, the rainforests are being depleted. And the rainforests are like where we get the most of our atmosphere that we keep alive with. Right? And you hear about it, and we say, oh, well, they're cutting them down so that we can graze cattle, so that we can have Big Macs or whatever, right? Or the ozone. The hole in the ozone is getting bigger and bigger, and you hear, well, the reason why is because of aerosol and styrofoam. Well, if the immune system of our consciousness was working, the minute we knew that, we'd say, that's it. No more clear-cutting rainforests. No more aerosol. No more styrofoam. No more of any of that. As soon as we realized what we were doing, that would be it. It would be gone. It would be handled, and we would have found brilliant ways. The combustion engine. We have all the technology that we need right now to be able to have all the transportation we want, to live perfectly happy lives without one little bit of pollution, without burning any fossil fuels. We don't use it. Why? Because when we hear about this, people go, oh, well. Right? Just like a person when they're having an AIDS symptom, right? Same thing with, now this is another thing with cancer. What's a cancer cell? Cancer cell is a cell in the body that's healthy, decides it doesn't want to go along with the rest of the body, decides it wants to go create its own universe. And it goes and it rolls, and it enrolls other cells to go and go play false kingdom with it. And pretty soon it becomes a tumor. And pretty soon that malignancy, if it's left to do that, takes over the organism, and no one wins. Right? The cancer doesn't win because there's no host. Nobody wins. Remember that movie War Games? Anybody see that movie War Games? At the very end, when the computer's playing tic-tac-toe against itself, and it's playing tic-tac-toe, and because it's so brilliant and it can handle everything, it finally learns that the only solution is not to play. Right? Because nobody wins. But that's what disease is. It's no win. But it's like an ingrown toenail. It's your own power used against yourself. And it's not, nobody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to have cancer today. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to be neurotic. That's what I want. I want to have a neuroses. It happens because we fall asleep. It happens because we're atrophied. It happens because we're lazy. Right? So this false sense of ourself starts to take over. And then the group mind of false self, we have a group ego on top of it all. And it's all about that too. So we have a lot of work to do on ourselves. And the only work to do in healing is work on ourselves, work in the realms of consciousness. So the first thing you want to do is be able to, like I said, start to be able to discipline your mind. Even if you can do 30 minutes a day. In A Course in Miracles it says 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day in the morning of you hooking, it calls it the Holy Spirit, the teacher. 5 minutes a day in the morning is all it takes for the rest of your day, your thoughts, to be under the guidance of this inner teacher. What's the inner teacher? The inner teacher is just everything that's peaceful about you and the real part of you. The inner teacher is the part that you have no clue about, that's really who you are. The inner teacher is being guided intuitively to everything that is about love. Right? Love is just the absence of tension, we say in our tradition. Love is just the absence of tension. In A Course in Miracles, it says it in a different way. It says it's the absence of fear. Each person that you meet is an assignment. Each person that you come in contact with is an assignment that the universe has set up so that you can learn something. And the only way you can learn is by teaching. So each person you meet is an opportunity for your own self-healing. The only way that you can heal yourself is when you allow yourself to get into the truth about what your relationship's about. I'm here to demonstrate love. I'm here to teach love. That's the thing about that I just always makes me want to just go bleh when I see a lot of this Christian stuff. I mean, these people think they've got a monopoly on this, and this whole religion built on what the Course in Miracles calls the ego religion. And this whole thing about Christians saying that the whole concept of sin, right? Well, most of us were raised in either that or even the Jewish faith has sin. Raised in this thing where we were raised to think that we're guilty sinners, right? Most of us, I don't know if any of you were raised Christian. I sure was. I was raised Catholic. And I know that because of Adam and Eve, I'm guilty. And that's what I was taught, and that's the way it's going to be. And the only way to get forgiveness is by groveling. And the only way to and the only way to forgive another is by two ways. You can either, if from a fundamentalist perspective, say, well, you're bad, but I'm saved now, so I will forgive you, and put yourself up here and then down here. Or you can say, oh, well, we're all rotten, miserable sinners, so it doesn't matter. And so you're all down here. Well, what real true forgiveness is that you'll find when you start following your heart and following that peaceful place every day, real true forgiveness is none of that. Real true forgiveness is doing what we said at the beginning of this talk, is being able to see past all of that other stuff, to see right into the heart of who that person really is. They're not their past mistakes. They're not their temper tantrum. They're not their disease. They're not their resume. They're not that any of those things. They're not anything. They're not their body. What they are is a child of the universe. They're a child of love. And what you're here to do, the only purpose that you're here to serve, is to teach love to them. Not talk love to them. Not beat them over the head with your philosophy. Not lecture at them. But to love them. And it's a silent thing. They don't even have to know you're doing it consciously. They're conscious. Sometimes it's much better if you don't say this stuff to people. Hello. You're a child of... can you imagine going into your boss? Hello, we're two children of the universe. We're creatures of love, and all I'm here to do is love you. And he's thinking, I thought you were here to type, So you don't say things. Most of the time it's bad to say things. It's counterproductive to say things. But that doesn't mean that you're not supposed to do this work. You are supposed to do this work. In fact, the work is much more potent if it's done internally and you keep your mouth shut. Does that make sense? But see, that's the thing about Christians, that they're so off. And I shouldn't say all Christians. I'm not bashing Christians, but I do think it's important that you're aware, that everybody's aware. You can't just say, being loving doesn't mean that you're enabling everybody's behavior. You don't just, let people treat you however they want to treat you. That's not being loving. If somebody is treating you in a way that is unloving, A Course in Miracles would say what they're doing is calling for love. They're not being bad, but they're being frightened. Okay, and it'll manifest in all kinds of hideous ways, even down to Hitler. Okay, so condemnation of them is not the answer, but it's also not the answer to enable that behavior. So oftentimes no is the loving response. We were talking about this on an email list about Isaac Bonowitz was talking about how the fundamentalist movement is trying to it's almost Nazistic about the way they're anti-pagan and anti-witchcraft, and how I was getting almost the sense that we were to rise up and fight against this oppressor. And my perspective on that is, I agree, you do have to say no. You don't allow yourself to be tied to a stake and burned. You don't allow yourself to be tied to a cross and crucified. Jesus could do that because he did it on purpose, okay? Do you see the difference? Jesus did it on purpose to teach a lesson. We're not Jesus in that. If you're a Christian in this room, the whole idea was that you wouldn't have to do that, right? So none of us in this room are supposed to be tortured by the world. That's not our function here. So there's two things. First of all, if somebody's giving you a problem, you do need to eat the thorns. You do need to just relax into the situation because you're here to love them. But at the same time, you are allowed to set a healthy boundary. Does that make sense? Just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you have to have lunch with them. Just because you forgive an abusive parent doesn't mean that you have to engage in a conversation with them necessarily. And even in Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that you make amends with people in person if it won't endanger you or that person to do so, right? Making amends isn't only when you've wronged somebody, it's when they've wronged you too. Does that make sense? If somebody's wronged you, quote, wronged you, you need to get to the point in your own consciousness where you forgive them and you see past that, okay? So, anyway, I got lost on that tangent. So our purpose here again is to teach love. And so the gospel, according to the Christian perspective, is a book. The gospel is a book. It's not the gospel. The gospel has no form. The gospel existed before Jesus. Gospel means teaching love. That's it. Teaching the good news. What is good news? Good news is this isn't real. The good news is none of this is real. Your disease isn't real. Your problems aren't real. Your money isn't real. Your car isn't real. All that stuff. And people hear that your car isn't real and they go, oh, if they like their car. But you know what? If you think that your car is the source of the happiness that you get when you're in your car, you don't understand your car. Your car is there to transport you. You can have a really nice car. There's nothing wrong with having a really nice car. But if your identity is wrapped up in your really nice car, the minute you get a dent on your really nice car, then you're in trouble. Isn't that true? If your relationship is all about, that's what an idol is in the Old Testament. If your relationship is God, then your relationship made you its prisoner. If your job is your God, then your job has made you its prisoner. Anything that you make God that's not God makes you its slave. We're not children of money. We're not children of politics. We're not children of merchandising. We're not children of anything in the mortal world. We are children of the universe. We're children of love. And those things are supposed to be our tools. We're supposed to use them. They're not supposed to use us. We're supposed to use money. Money is not supposed to use us. We're supposed to use our bodies. Our bodies are not supposed to use us. We're supposed to use our minds. Our minds are not supposed to use us. But can you see how it's all backwards? Everything is flipped in this world, and that's why you can't teach yourself. A Course in Miracles says that's why you need to meditate. That's why you need to follow that still small voice within you and do what it says. And after you get good at it, you get really good at it. You do. You go, wow, I can tell I should have listened to that still small voice within me because I really fucked up again. I'm in a really bad situation. And that's a good thing. And then each and every lesson that you learn through gratitude, right? Your gratitude isn't like, I'm grateful for my car, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my marriage. It's, I'm grateful for this moment. You know, there's 3 wonderful keys of healing that a guru in India called Babaji, who's not around anymore, Harikan Babaji, he ascended, meaning he died. But 3 principles that he taught: praise, love, and gratitude. Praise is praising the creative power that made us. We are the creation, not the creator. We have got to get clear on that, because if we don't get clear on that, we're not bad, but we will be unhappy. If you get that, you will always be sick, and you will always be on your way to death. If you always think that you are the creator and not the creation, and we do this in subtle ways by thinking we can fix things. You can't fix things. There's no way that you can fix things. If you don't get that, you're always going to be in misery. But there is a power greater than you that can lead you into the right places. Does that make sense? So that's praise. And a great tool for praise is meditation or prayer. Gratitude is being in total humility at all times. That's also part of praise too, but being grateful for each moment, no matter what happens, no matter if you perceive it as a negative thing or you perceive it as a positive thing. If you are grateful for it, it's automatically transformed in your presence to a positive thing, to its real right place in the universe. Gratitude isn't wondering if this condition is right for you, it's assuming that it's right for you. If it's in front of you, it's right for you. How many people audition their relationships? I don't know if they're right for me. I'm going to have to see how they treat me another couple weeks. Or their job. I don't know if this is the place for me. If this is really where I want to be in 10 years. You know, rather than saying, I'm here right now and I'm grateful for this moment, I trust that the universe knows what it's doing. It, like, has the earth spinning around the sun. It seems to be able to be growing grass fine without my help. The gravity works great without me voting on it or anything, right? But somehow I think that I have to control my project, you know. Instead, we could just be in the moment and say, okay, well, I did this today. I'm supposed to be typing this letter. And I'm like thinking, God, you know, if I'm really zen about this, if I'm really in the moment, I was like up to 120 words a minute, you know. But if I'm like going, God damn it, I wish I was out of this hole, you know. I'm always making mistakes. I've always got a bad attitude. Nobody wants to be around me. But if you are in the moment, if you are grateful for that moment, then you're a better lover. Isn't that true? I mean, if you're thinking about laundry during sex, aren't you a horrible lover? Or a better mate, you know, if you're right there with your mate and you're like so grateful for their presence, no matter if they're screaming and yelling at you or not, you know, it's hard for them to continue that. Have you noticed? It's like I have, you know, if my mate is like freaking out at me, And I'm just grateful for the presence of him. And then all of a sudden it's just like it's gone. We forgot that was even happening. But then if I start getting into blaming this person for the fact that he just treated me wrong, then I'm off. And then he has to bring me up. So no matter where you are, if your gratitude is all about this is where I'm supposed to be and I need to just breathe in, drink in, suck the juice out of this moment because it's all going to be over really soon. Isn't that true? You get that after you're 30, you're a lot more clear on that than you are in your 20s and in your teens, that life doesn't last forever. The life that we understand it, eternal life lasts forever, but the experiences that we waste in this life, it's just pathetic in the time that we waste. Anyway, so that's praise. That's praise and gratitude. And love is that act of being at peace and opening our heart, because the ultimate lack of healing in all disease is the fact that we have something in front of our hearts. We've hardened our hearts. We've closed our hearts off. We're unwilling. We're afraid to just, no matter how scary it seems, no matter how scary that person seems right in front of you, is to just like, I'm going to open up and I'm going to silently bless them. I'm going to love them. Silently bless them. I love that. There's one thing I love about the craft is that term, blessed be, is just the most powerful thing that in our vocabulary is just you silently, you close your eyes if you can. If not, you don't. And you just take a deep breath and you find some sense of relaxation within you and you just bless that person, And when you do that, when you can extend love to that person, no matter if they're judging you, no matter if they're hurting you, no matter what they're doing to you, the transformation that occurs right before your very eyes and in your body.